here. So when I got the brief to come talk to this audience, it felt really relevant because when I started out, I actually started out on the PR side of things, working for agencies here in New York, and started in consumer marketing, and ultimately moved to consumer digital and running the digital team for an agency here in New York, and inadvertently was sort of pulled into crisis communications because at that time things were sort of showing up on these platforms and brands were trying to figure out how you respond in the moment and get ahead of it, and they were thinking about legal and all the things that you have to think about when a story is breaking. And so I very quickly learned about crisis communications and sort of how you approach that. And that's when I learned about things like scenario planning and really thinking through what you might have to deal with if you're a brand from a negative perspective. But we also know with a lot of these brands is that there's huge opportunity that's positive. And that actually teed me up, I've found, really well for my job at Twitter, which is that we're constantly seeing stories emerge on the platform. And we're constantly seeing that stories start on the platform. And that's where media are now sourcing their stories, and it's where they're telling their stories, and it's where they're directing people to read their stories once they have an editorial point of view. And so a lot of our work at Twitter with brands in the last few years has really been helping them understand the cadence of a story on the platform, and helping them understand the mechanics and how you think about that, because the best brands that are live on Twitter are brands that are actually planning ahead for it. So I want to walk you through a typical sort of day on Twitter as a story is breaking. And I think most people know this face now, right? This is, right? I hope. This is Sterling, as we're talking about him. And as we saw, there was that epic press conference where it became clear that the NBA had banned Donald Sterling for life, and you can see that they issued the tweet to support that, right? As the press conference was happening. It was between 2 and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is 2:27 p.m. We saw the immediate response, 2:29 p.m., Magic Johnson sharing his thoughts. Commissioner Silver showed great leadership in banning LA Clips owner Donald Sterling for life. LeBron James, 2:43 p.m., also joined in on this. Commissioner Silver, thank you for protecting our beautiful and powerful league. Great leader, bigger than basketball, strive for greatness. This is an illustration of the story breaking on Twitter, and this is just a matter of seconds. I mean, I want you to watch, and all of a sudden the US is just going to light up. That is when they said he's banned for life. And so we see these illustrations all the time on the platform, and we say, you know, it's big events, like somebody like a major NBA team owner getting banned for life, but it's also small events. We know when movie theaters have sold out. We see those same bursts of light when you look closely. If you come to Twitter in San Francisco or some of our other major offices, you'll see around the office these sort of live maps as we watch stories break. Ultimately, between 2 and 3 p.m., we saw 1.3 million tweets talking about this moment in time. So again, how quickly a story moves, it's just at a whole other pace, and it's so much more broadly dispersed because tweets travel. And so I want to talk about sort of the impact of this. I think a lot of people saw this. Carl Icahn, when he tweeted out, "We currently have a large position in Apple. We believe the company to be extremely undervalued. Spoke to Tim Cook today, more to come." Next tweet, "Had a nice conversation with Tim Cook today, discussed my opinion that a larger buyback should be done now. We plan to speak again shortly." Look what happens to the stock when somebody like Carl Icahn has a point of view and shares it on Twitter. Big jump. But it's not just people like Carl Icahn. Fashion editors, influencers can have a lot of power. So when Nina Garcia tweeted, "I'm at JCPenney's HQ. Thank you, Ron Johnson, for the walkthrough of JCP's prototype. Get ready to shop. It's going to be a game changer." This is what happened.
I've seen this.
So let me bottom line this. So you're suggesting, and it may be right, that a well-known fashion editor, I think it's Marie Claire, I'm not sure. Why would I know that anyway? that she is basically making positive comments about JCPenney's fashion strategy.
What she said was, I'm at JCPenney's headquarters. Thank you, Ron Johnson, for the walkthrough of JCPenney's prototype. Get ready to shop. It's going to be a game changer. And that was tweeted out 49 minutes ago.
When was that tweeted out?
49 minutes ago.
So you might have it there. That is Sherlock.
That's
Stock jumped 20%. And so, you know, the power of the platform, these influencers, stories starting and where they go and how you shape them, pretty profound from a business perspective. And that's why we're seeing brands really try to wrangle and understand how to use it. It's why we're seeing executives join Twitter and use it as a place for thought leadership. So Marissa Mayer was tweeting about their new logo, and people started to respond back to her and ask her, you know, say, Marissa Mayer, if you retweet this, I'll change my homepage. And she started to engage and respond and retweet. Yahoo has from a business perspective, has a huge image challenge, and her being on Twitter and being accessible and humanizing what the company stands for is a part of that strategy. And we're seeing it's changing how we connect to one another. It's not just about who you know, it's about getting closer to who you want to know. And so when Warren Buffett joined Twitter, this is, I think, my favorite first tweet ever. Warren is in the house. Really great. You know, at Twitter, we know when somebody like this joins Twitter, we call them very important tweeters. When they join Twitter, there's sort of a buzz that goes through the hallways because we know what's going to happen. Other people are going to engage. There's this conversation that we're going to eavesdrop on and have that opportunity. And it didn't disappoint. Soon after, Bill Gates tweeted at him and said, welcome to Twitter, Warren Buffett. First ever Twitter Bridge tourney starts now. I bid 3 hearts. They've got this famous friendship where they play bridge, and to sort of eavesdrop and get closer to that is part of the fun of the platform. But then soon after Bill Gates, Bill Clinton joined in and said, Warren Buffett, welcome to Twitter. What took you so long? What's amazing about this is Bill Clinton had joined Twitter the week before. So have to love the politician instinct that never dies there. And people like the Pope. Talk about another business challenge. The Catholic Church is in trouble, has been in trouble, and it's had a profound effect to see the leader of the church using the platform to talk about major issues of the day. Actually, some of our biggest VIPs on the platform are leaders of religious communities. They're allowing people to get closer to them. They're using it to share inspiration and show leadership in a different kind of way. And when we see people like this join the platform, we see user numbers light up. When the Pope joined, all of a sudden Latin America saw a huge hockey stick in new signups because of the Catholic community there. So it's interesting to watch and see how people respond when all of a sudden access is opened up to people like this. But inspiration can be found in many different ways, and there's also this lovely sort of democratization that we get to see. Who remembers Miles, right? One of the best stories. And you know, 10 years ago, this would have been a lovely story that would have been on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle, right? Well, the Make-A-Wish Foundation decided to use Twitter as the mechanism to drive the story and share the story. It was something that resonated with everyone. And so they actually, the first communication they made about it was via a tweet. Follow us for real-time updates on Twitter as this wish unfolds. Hashtag SFBadKid. Anybody following the story got to see photos and images of this little kid going around the city of San Francisco and solving crime for a day, being a superhero. Really powerful. I heard actually from people from Turkey, I heard from people from London, I heard from people from Tokyo. This is a story that is universal in terms of what it represents, and it translates. It made its way all the way up to the president. He's saying, way to go, Miles, way to save Gotham. And it actually made its way to the next Batman, Ben Affleck, bad kid, best Batman ever, hashtag SFBadKid, SF, hashtag Make-A-Wish. Again, think about the business impact. Make-A-Wish saw a huge spike in terms of donations that day. It reminded people sort of what the organization does in a very human way and telling a great story. And so we're seeing that the impact of this means that there's opportunities for companies to change how they connect to people, right? So there's great opportunities like this one. I don't know if you were following along when all of a sudden Colorado made it okay to purchase marijuana. And then for some intrepid brands, that provided an opportunity. This is the tweet from Ben & Jerry's. Breaking news, we're hearing reports of stores selling out of Ben & Jerry's in Colorado. What's up with that? This is a great opportunity, right? But we've found that, yes, these opportunities exist, but this is where we actually have to start to train brands, right? Because you can't just wait for something to happen. The Oreos tweet, as great as it was and as many awards as it won, actually caused a lot of problems at Twitter. And I'll tell you why. This happened, and it got a lot of attention. Real-time marketing was born, right? And all of a sudden, we started having these meetings where brand managers would come in with this look in their eyes, and somebody was telling them that they needed to be like Oreos. They needed to wait for the lights to go out at the biggest game in the world, with the largest audience ever, and serve something up that was clever and strategic and on brand. And that's just not scalable. The reality is I think a lot of people know now, is that Oreos, throughout the course of the year, was celebrating its 100th birthday. And so every day, they were doing the Daily Twist, which was based on the conversation of the day. And it was featuring their iconic cookie in a different representation, different piece of creative, sort of showing and illustrating that story. So that by the time the Super Bowl happened, they had the muscle memory built up to knock something out that was absolutely on brand, was strategic, was creative, and felt like Oreo. So that's what we want to get brands to, and that's how we're seeing brands move. And so it's not just thinking about your own scenarios, it's also thinking about sort of, again, like the behaviors and predictability of Twitter and how that works and how people sort of use it when they're watching big events. So again, the Olympics, huge opportunity, huge audience. We can't predict necessarily that Andy Murray is going to tweet at Jenny Jones. We can't predict that she's going to get on the podium. Looks likely. But you can predict the scenarios and sort of the audience that's going to be tweeting and watching these events together, right? And so a game like the Champions League final, this is the tweet graph, and you see people tweeting around the kickoff, you see people tweeting, you know, when big goals are scored, these huge moments of engagement as the audience is sort of watching and participating together, the roar of the crowd sort of echoing out on Twitter, right? And so this is what we're seeing brands start to do. And this is for these big moments, right? These moments where brands are spending millions of dollars to sponsor. This is what we call a live studio. This is a brand that's a major sponsor of the Olympics. And the people in this room are digital, creative, media, brand, and legal. And what they're doing is they're watching the opening ceremonies, and they're thinking about what they might serve up in terms of content in the moment. But they're not just walking into the room and waiting to be creative once they enter the room. They have a plan of attack. They know the creative and the story that they're telling throughout the games. And they're thinking about the scenarios that exist, because those scenarios, again, very predictable about what's going to happen around these big moments. When people score, there's going to be conversation. People are going to talk about the coaches. They're going to talk about the biggest players. And we know whenever a game is over, at the very end, there's going to be a spike in conversation as people talk about the outcome. And so brands are thinking about these scenarios, and they're thinking about the kind of creative that they might offer up into these scenarios. So this is an example of Adidas, and this is a piece of creative they used. But if you look at it, it could work either way, win or lose. And they actually have different text and different content that they have ready to push play depending on the outcome, depending on the scenario. So they've been able to sort of navigate some of the issues that brands face. Legal, but also, again, is it creative? Is it good? Is it strategic? Does it support our bigger story? And on Twitter, you know, there's all kinds of targeting that you can use, right? So there's different people you want to reach. You don't necessarily want to reach everyone. So they're serving this up to the right audience, the right time in the moment in which they're most receptive. Why are brands spending so much time and energy trying to figure this out? We know when there is a Twitter layer on top of a sponsorship that we see a 20% increase in brand message association with that sponsorship. So if you are a brand spending millions of dollars and you're trying to use a halo marketing effect to improve the equity that surrounds your brand, that's a story that translates to a CMO. And to own that conversation and own that moment is a huge opportunity. That's why they're focusing on it. It's not just events, though, like the World Cup, like the Olympics. It's also the everyday, and this is probably where we've had to spend the most time in educating brands, helping them understand that, again, these patterns, when you step back from 1 billion tweets every 2 days, there's a lot of predictability. So we know on Twitter when people are hungry. We see this pattern every single day. This matters to a lot of CPG companies. We actually know when people are getting ready. We see this pattern repeat itself week over week. Look what happens on Friday and Saturday night, no surprise. This is also very interesting to companies like L'Oreal, CoverGirl. We know when people are going for runs on Twitter. This pattern repeats itself week over week. Look what happens towards the end of the week. Less people are talking about going for runs. And so we're seeing brands use this information to inform themselves in a lot of different ways. This is what Nike serves up to their followers. And if you look at the timestamp is 6:37 a.m. because that's when people are talking about going for a run or debating where they're going to go for a run, and they may need some inspiration to actually get out on the road. This is great value for their followers. It also tells them when to promote and target and who to target with the right content, right? Lots of users, but you want to find the people who are most relevant to you. So they're using those patterns to find those people. And interestingly, it also tells them when they want to staff up their teams who might respond or engage with those people on Twitter, right? There are different spikes throughout the days. It's just like when you go into a Starbucks. Monday morning, there are more people at Starbucks working behind the counter than there are, at 4 o'clock on a Saturday, probably. So it's applying that sort of methodology to run your business smarter. I mean, we're seeing lots of creativity around that. It's pretty basic, right? Nike running, that makes sense. But what about the weather? We know the pattern around the weather. There's usually a pattern when people are trying to figure out what they're going to wear for that day and how they're going to do their hair. But then we also see a second spike around lunchtime. Because in cities like New York, when you're trying to figure out if you're going to go out for lunch that day, right? What's the weather look like? Well, if it looks like this, that impacts your decision. And if it looks like this is actually an opportunity for what we call the rainy day tweet. This is from Seamless. And this is when you want to remind people about Seamless and maybe suggest that today is a good day for a grilled cheese sandwich. Really smart in terms of content and creative and who they're targeting and when they're hitting them with that. I want to go back to the Sterling story, and again, sort of like how we're seeing brands and companies think about these behaviors and these patterns. There was a press conference, and the NBA knew about 20 minutes in, they were going to say, they were going to drop the bomb, right? That he was banned for life. And so when they served and looked at sort of the pattern and predicted pattern, no surprise, you see the spike and then you see the conversation, right? They made sure that their tweet included sort of the press release, right? So it wasn't just the announcement, it's all the information. They're thinking about where the story is going to go. They're thinking about how you make sure that they own that story and that they're providing all the information that they want to be included in that story when it leaves and as it travels and goes to other places. So again, it's just a new way of planning, a new way of thinking, and it's understanding how Twitter works. It's understanding how the people that matter to you work. And again, where a story's going to go. So with that, thank you.